Learning target 6.2. I can define and classify a reaction as endothermic and exothermic. So the thing to realize here is that we can learn a lot just from breaking down these words. So the first thing I want to look at is the prefix of each of these words. So let's start with endothermic. Endo stands for in. Exo also means out. So endo means in, exo means out. Okay, the next thing I want to look at is the second half of the word. If we notice, the second half of the word is the same. They both have the word thermic. Okay? Oops. Thermic means, kind of sounds like thermal, which means heat. So thermic means heat. So now that we separated it out and kind of broke down the word, we know that endothermic means in with heat, and exothermic means out with heat. So what that means is an endothermic reaction, heat is going into the reaction. Which means heat is a reactant. And that is for endothermic. Exothermic, on the other hand, means heat is coming out of the reaction. Heat is a product, meaning is being produced by the reaction. Okay, so again, endothermic, heat is going into the reaction. Exothermic, heat is coming out of the reaction. So it's all about where the heat is. If it's going into the reaction, it is endothermic. If it is coming out of the reaction, it is exothermic. So let's split this down the middle. So we can separate these into endo and exothermic reactions. So let's look at the first one. Water condenses on the outside of a glass of milk. So on a hot summer day, you reach for a cup of milk, and all of a sudden the outside of the glass is all wet. How does that happen? Well, water vapor or gas cools down rapidly on the outside of your glass, and it condenses into liquid and forms on the outside of your glass. In order for that to happen, a gas has to turn into a liquid, which means heat has to be removed from the system, which means it's exothermic. 2, ice cream melts. So if ice cream melts, you have to be adding heat to it. You have to be adding heat to get something to melt. Anytime anything melts, you have to add heat to it. And if you're adding heat, that's endothermic. A pot of boiling water is turned into steam. This is an easy one. It tells you what you're doing. You are boiling water, so you are adding heat. If you're adding heat, it is endothermic. Okay, number 4. A liquid is turned into a solid. So let's think back to water. If you turn liquid water into solid water, you are turning water into ice. In order to turn water into ice, you have to remove heat. And if you're removing heat, it's exothermic. Okay, number 5. Water is cooled using special equipment to form ice. Well, anytime water is cooled, you are removing heat. If you're removing heat, heat is a product. It's coming out of the reaction, so it's exothermic. Number 6. Oxygen gas is turned into solid. Anytime you're turning a solid into, anytime you're turning a gas into a solid, that's going from high energy state gas through liquid all the way to a solid. So you have to be removing heat from the system. And if you're removing heat, that is exothermic. So I'm going to put it in my exothermic category. And then my last one is solid iron bars are turned into liquid. So if you're going from solid to liquid, that's like melting. So if you melt solid ice into liquid water, you have to add heat. So that is going to be endothermic. Heat is going to be going into the system. So here is my final tally. And there's the list again, if you want to see them all. So let's move on down to our individual example. So the individual example is a friend of yours says that sweating is an example of an endothermic process. Is your friend correct? Why or why not? So pause the video and try this one on your own. Okay, so let's think about what's happening here. You're sitting here on a hot summer day. The sun is putting out some heat. It's warming you up. It's heating you up. Your temperature is increasing. You are starting to get angry, so your smiley face turns into a frown face. And then you start to sweat, and it starts to beat up on your body, and it starts to pour down your body. What is your body trying to do? Your body is getting too hot, so it is trying to remove some of the heat. It's trying to get heat out. Okay, if it is trying to remove heat, what type of process do we think this is? So by sweating, you are removing the heat from your body. A lot of people say, oh, since you're removing heat, this must be exo. Okay, those people would be wrong. Your friend, in saying that this is an endothermic process, is correct. So they did get this right. So let me explain why. So what's happening is these little balls of sweat on your skin are trying to evaporate. How are they going to evaporate? By heating up. Where are they going to get this energy to heat up? From your body. So what's happening is your body is heating up this sweat, and the sweat is evaporating. So your body is actually adding heat to the sweat. Okay, and anytime you're adding heat, that is a endothermic process. So adding heat equals endothermic. Okay, and if you're adding heat to something that's an endothermic process, and your body is warming up the sweat so much that it will evaporate. Okay, and that is how your body cools off.